to Mapping the College Audition, a podcast where we explore the landscape of the college theater world and try to demystify this daunting audition process. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA. That's Musical Theater College Auditions. And today we've got a downtown Pittsburgh yinzer of a show lined up for you. Zeva Barzell of Point Park University joins us to chat about their program. And if you guys couldn't tell, that was me trying to do a Pittsburgh accent. Zeva herself does not have a Pittsburgh accent in any way, shape, or form, but I do, and I love to do it. So anytime I have an opportunity, I'm whip it out. Today, we got into the supportive ambition of Point Park students. We talked about their approach to training as a triple threat model and that they have a great dance program, but they're not just about dance. We talked about the vertical campus of a city school and some of the environment that the wonderful Pittsburgh downtown provides. Zeva gives some audition advice. She certainly says no monologues from monologue books if you can avoid it, and really gets into the specifics of how important singing skill is for musical theater majors, especially she mentioned sort of pitchiness on a pre-screen is a big no-no if possible. We talk a little bit about Point Park's conservatory-style, how they don't have quite the same high GPA requirement as some other schools, but that they do have an honors program and academic scholarships for the more academically gifted students. We also talk a little bit about the post-pandemic life and how students are a bit quieter in the room after 2 whole years of virtual training. But before we get into the interview with Zeva, Meghan, how are you doing?
Chicago is sunny today, and I'm excited for the upcoming tours to come in for like Broadway in Chicago. A few of my friends are going to come into town, so that's the exciting part of living here. Friends are forced to come to see me. But we're also doing some big stuff with the upcoming junior weekend, doing some prep for that. So lots of things going
Some
on.
in-person events for our juniors.
Yes.
It's very exciting. Yeah, it
hmm
feels like the theme right now is like work is coming back, the industry's coming back. I mean, for some people it's come back, but really I can say for our family, it's really exciting that Elizabeth has a couple gigs in the offing, which has been both very exciting for us, but also terrifying with babysitting and trying to do 2 full-time jobs while parenting a 6-month-old has been an exciting journey. But if anyone's in New York City, Elizabeth will be performing at Carnegie Hall. This is in early March, on March 10th, with Anyone Can Whistle. She's doing a concert version of it with Santino Fontana and Vanessa Williams. And she's also doing a couple episode arc of Gossip Girl. So we're like in like double filming and rehearsal mode and trying to do everything at once at our home. It's just a little crazy. It's fun, but we're exhausted.
Yeah. When can we see her in these upcoming Gossip Girl episodes? When
Ooh,
are they dropping?
great question. I should be a better press person for her,
He has no idea.
but no idea. The second season of Gossip Girl is whenever
So
that
just keep on refreshing your page, your
yeah, go
TV.
on your devices, Hulu, Roku, Prime Video, wherever such things happen. HBO Max, I actually think is the right answer there, but you'll figure it out. It'll show up. When you see someone who looks like Elizabeth, you're like, oh my God, that's her. That's Elizabeth. You'll see.
In one of the many jobs that Charlie does. Press for Elizabeth?
Not his
Not
best.
his best.
Not his best. It's true.
But speaking of things that you are good at, should we get into this episode?
Yes, Meghan. But speaking of press for this podcast, let's get into this episode with Zeva Barzell from Point Park University. Well, we are honored to be joined by Zeva Barzell here from Point Park University. Zeva has a BFA in acting and directing from Ithaca College and an MFA in acting from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. She was also trained and mentored by Tony Award winner Daniel Sullivan, one of my favorite directors I've ever worked with. Also supplemental training with Anne Bogart, Royal Shakespeare Company. Oh my gosh, so many great places. Also a distinguished career acting as well. Prior to joining Point Park, she taught in the acting programs at the University of Illinois and Bradley University, and is now the director of musical theater and an associate professor at Point Park University, which is located in my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They take class sizes of about 26 musical theater and about 26 actors as well. They offer degrees in BFA musical theater, BFA acting, BFA theater arts, BFA production, and some other degrees in cinema arts, etc. Zeva, how are you doing? Welcome on the pod.
Thank you. I'm doing wonderfully.
Before we dive too deep into Point Park, and we're going to spend most of our time chatting about the school, I'd just love to hear a little bit about your journey to Point Park and to the wonderful Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So It sort of was a surprise to me, actually. I was an actor living in New York, had a career for about 15 years, and decided that I was ready for more training, which is when I went back to get my MFA. Um, had no intention of teaching, or, we thought we were going to go to Chicago or back to New York. And I found a great passion for it. I was teaching some classes when I was a grad student. And I thought it was what a great way to give back. And I sort of fell in love with it. And that's kind of how my journey led me forward to Point Park.
And how long have you been here now as the head or the director of musical theater at Point
I've
Park?
been a director for less than I've been here. So I came here in 2005, and it's been about, I think, 7 or 8 years I've been
Hmm.
heading up the program.
A nice chunk. A couple different classes have gone through. You've gotten to really get your legs under you. So then let's dive into it. Let's talk a little bit in your tenure as director and just as a professor at Point Park. What do you feel like it means to be a Point Park University student?
I think watching the students is such an honor, really. We have students that are ambitious and competitive, but with themselves, and
Mm,
incredibly supportive of each other. They work incredibly hard. They have a great work ethic. They get out of school and work, which you
hmm
can see by some of those lists that we get to appear on. But I also think that they have a taste for excellence and a respect for the craft, and really are in it for a lifelong journey as an artist. And they're pretty terrific.
Oh, well, I don't disagree. We've had a lot of students attend with wonderful experiences. Let's talk a little bit about. So, let's say I come in and I'm a freshman, and I am that kind of perfect balance of competitivism with myself, but I'm supportive with my peers, and I'm all those things. What am I going to learn in those 4 years? So talk me through a little bit, like freshman through senior year. What is the kind of educational track for a musical theater student, especially?
So the progression that we have is the first year is pretty much like diagnostic, getting everyone on the same page, very foundational. And then year 2 and 3 is training and getting ready to be great in the play.
Mm,
And then the fourth year is dedicated to becoming great in the audition space, so that you have an opportunity to be great in the
mm,
play. So that's pretty much how it goes. It really is a triple threat program, which doesn't mean the students are triple threats. It means that's how we approach the training. So a third of the training is dance, a third of the training is in the voice area, which would include like music theory, sight singing, piano, things like that, ensemble singing. And a third is in acting, which they take dual classes. So they have acting classes with the acting majors. And with spoken text, and then they have acting through song, which is acting classes through musical text.
You led right to my next question, which is sort of about which discipline of musical theater do you feel like you focus on? And I'll even throw out there, I do think the reputation of Point Park out there is a really strong dance school.
Mhm.
Is that something that you kind of own and say, yeah, that is something we lead with? Is it something you're trying to push almost back against and say, no, we're really leading with these all equally? Or I guess, how does your relationship with that label, if it's ever thrown at you, how does that feel?
I think I saw, like, in my time, sort of the feedback from the industry people, and it used to always be, oh yeah, Point Park dancers, in musical theater. And then we started hearing, oh yes, when a Point Park student comes in the room, I know that they're going to be able to tell a story. I know that they're going to be strong with the text. I know the acting will be strong. So I think we've seen where we want to go, which is that we want our students to graduate in the strongest place they can be in all areas at that point. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, they're going to grow and change over time. But one of the amazing, wonderful things is that we do have one of the best dance programs in the country, and our students take class in that program. So the instructors are the same that are teaching the dance majors. And we have this wonderful dance minor that they can, the folks that can really dance can audition for. And if they're accepted, then they start dancing with the dance majors.
Hmm.
So we're really fortunate and we're really lucky that that is an area that's so strong. But I think we're equally strong in all three areas.
Totally. And I've definitely seen more and more some of our students who were not dancers first, who've decided to attend Point Park and have had really successful experiences. How does it work differently? Let's say if I were to come in maybe I am a capital D dancer versus maybe I'm a more beginner. I'm athletic, but I'm still new to the dance world. How does that work differently in terms of how my training might exist at Point Park?
So the classes that are required for the major, let's say you're not doing the minor, um, everyone's taking ballet at 8 a.m. 5 days a week their freshman year. They have to take modern, they have to take jazz, they have to take tap, but the classes are leveled so that they're working at their own level.
Yeah. And when you say leveled, do you mean leveled within the year or leveled like would freshmen be taking with seniors, in terms of
No,
those kind
leveled. The freshmen take with the freshmen, but sometimes they will have upperclassmen who are taking it as supplemental.
of?
But it's basically their skill level. That's how they're.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I love it. And then let's chat a little bit about kind of outside of the theater program. So outside of just what I'm doing in the musical theater or even maybe acting world, what else does Point Park University, it's which I'm used to calling it Point Park College because when I was a kid, it
Yeah.
was Point Park College. But what
Right.
else does the university kind of afford to a prospective student?
So I mean, there are many things, and you being a Pittsburgher, it's an amazing city to go to
Mm,
school in,
mm,
and we're
mm.
downtown. We have
You say downtown. We're downtown.
downtown. Yeah. We're downtown, and there's so much theater here. All the national tours come through at a theater that's walkable from school. We have a Lort theater that's walkable. I mean, there's so much. We have green space. You can rent
Hmm.
bicycles. It's a pretty amazing city, and we're sort of in the heart of it. And then with the school itself, some of the things that I think are lovely is there's a lot of student directed areas. We have two student-run companies that one is part of the program because we have in our theater arts there's a playwriting and a directing track, um, and so that is part of that's part of the program. And then there's one that's sort of supported by the university, but it's the same. It's all the
Hmm.
theater students, um, and so there are many like there are many clubs that they can belong to. For everything that is more of the arts to things that aren't in the arts at all. And I just think, we have great medical, which is always, I think, probably better for the parents than for, the
You mean
students.
like the University of Pittsburgh medical system?
Yes, yeah.
One of the
And I
best in the
mean,
world. True.
right, we have a really good relationship with the UPM Voice Clinic, so
Hmm.
for vocal health, which it's one of the best in the country. So I think there's a lot of things that the students are exposed to. Um,
And what about the academic university in terms of like what other classes would I be taking? So I'm definitely taking dance. I'm singing dance every day. It sounds like freshman year. I'm
yeah.
singing. I'm acting. What else am I doing in terms of the sort of university experience?
So I think it's important to note like it's a conservatory style. So there's 132 or 133 contact hours, and of those, about 100 are in the field.
Hmm.
So you're talking there's 42 core credits is what they call the gen eds here. Um, but some of those are theater history. One is the New York Showcase, and the others are themed. Like so, there might be math and science and history, but they're themed. And so, under the theme, there'll be all kinds of academics that the students can choose from.
By theme, do you mean it's like math for the actor? Like how to do your taxes as an actor or something? That would
Um,
be fantastic if it was
yeah,
true.
that would be, and we do kind of cover that in one of our senior classes, but it's more like people of the world, and then there'll
Uh,
be all kinds of academic things underneath it.
if I'm an acting major at musical theater, but maybe I'm an acting major at Point Park, I say, but maybe I'm musical theater curious. What
Mhm.
opportunities do I have to kind of cross that boundary? And do I get to take any musical theater classes as an actor or dance and
Well,
singing, etc.?
some you have to. They take two semesters of singing for the actor. But we also have an MT minor that they can audition for, and that will have them taking dance classes, sight singing, music theory, piano, acting through songs. So there's certainly an opportunity. And
Hmm.
when students audition for the conservatory season, the major does not have any influence over the casting. So we have MTs that are cast in plays and acting majors that are cast in musicals.
Now, especially as this episode is releasing, a lot of our seniors are really bringing in their results and they're going to have lots of fantastic
Yeah.
options at different schools. Why do you find a student may not choose your school? So if you're between they're between a couple schools and the student actually goes, I'm going to go somewhere else. If you get to hear that reason, why do you find that a student says, here's why Point Park wasn't the right fit for me?
I think sometimes students want a campus, a real campus. Um, with, major sports teams and, sort of that campus life. And I think there is campus life and we do have sports teams, but we are in a downtown vertical campus. And I think for some students, that's just kind of not what they're looking for. And that's at least what I hear the most is really, if you want some city life, it's going to be the perfect campus for you. But if you don't, then it might be tough.
We'll take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk a lot about the audition process for Point Park. So back in a flash. All right, we are back with Zeva Barzell from Point Park University, and we're going to talk a little bit about the audition process. So I'd love to just know, kind of in short, what do you think makes a great audition for you?
That's so hard to pinpoint. And of course, we get asked that question a lot. But I think obviously talent. But there's something I think I look for anyway, is just someone that is eager to have training, not just do the school musical, someone that's really interested in training, of ready to maybe let some things go and build new skills, is passionate in the room. I had a mentor once tell me, just imagine having them in class, which is often what I do. And if they're excited and they're talented and they have passion or great potential, there's someone we'd love to work with.
And how do I show that? So this, because I feel like there's a lot of advice that I give, and then I'll hear my students say, but how do I be myself? How do I, it's like, how do I show if I'm interested in training, other than if someone said, hey, why are you interested in going to school? And you could say, I'm interested in training. But if I'm not given that kind of interview question opportunity, how do you feel like you see that through the work of a student to see that they are interested in it?
So I think that I do see that in the work of a student in the material that they pick. And I think when I say the material that they pick, I don't care if I've heard it a million times or if it's new, but usually if a student loves what they're doing, that kind of shines through. So I think that's sort of the key, is to pick material that they feel really connected to, that that story is something that resonates well with them, so that they can be on board even when nerves kick in. And just say, hi when they come in the room. And so I think it's good to have questions too. I mean, I'll often say, like, what makes you interested in coming here? And you can tell when students have done a little research. And so on my end, I mean, of course, I understand there are a lot of auditions happening, but I'm always like, yeah, so they really, are interested in coming to this particular program.
Totally. And is there anything that you feel like you really don't want to see in a student's audition? Any kind of pet peeves or something that if you see this, you go, oh, it just puts me in a bad mood?
Not really. I mean, I do think with monologues, it's really best if they stay away from monologue books. I have a much better appreciation for monologues from plays. And I think sometimes students maybe work a little too hard trying to be like a character, when in essence we just want to hear them kind of talk. And but I don't really. I mean, I really enjoy meeting all these young folks, and they all have a different degree of preparation. And so, I don't think there's nothing.
And how does either of these answers change, or any specific advice, if we're talking about either a video taped audition, maybe a pre-screen audition, or a Zoom audition, in terms of a kind of any virtual experience? How does that shift any of what you're looking for in the audition experience?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we just have to understand it's virtual, right? And so if we see they're having technical problems, we want them to take a minute, because I think the nerves start going. And I think when you have your belters, they have to just be a little bit careful with the sound, because sometimes when they're really blessed in those belts, we can't really hear what the voice sounds like. I think it's nice when they look towards their camera so we can see their eyes. So those are like more technical things, but those are easy things for us to fix in the room,
Totally. Have you had a lot of students looking at get away from the camera? Like
Yeah.
they're doing backward monologues?
We're looking very, very much to the side.
Oof.
Yeah. Or way above so you can't see their eyes.
Let me ask my favorite question, which is, if you're going to decide for the artistic yes or no in the room, how much for you, in terms of a percentage or in terms of however you want to talk about it, how much of it is about the kind of skill displayed in the initial material, so in the monologues and the songs that you might see, or in the dance work that you'd see, versus maybe the intangibles that you see of how they walk in the room and say hi, or how they take an adjustment if you give one, or how they answer an interview question when you talk to them. How much feels like it's in Camp A versus Camp B?
Well, I think it's sort of a combination, but I think really there's so much singing in our program that the skill as a singer really is important, and
Mm-hmm.
especially for a pre-screen where we feel like they've had a chance to review it and go back. Pitch issues are something that would probably, no matter how lovely they are in the
Uh-huh.
room, would probably change how we might feel about that.
So you see a pitchy singer and it might just be, I'm not X just for you. I'm going, it's not going to be a yes for me from a musical theater perspective if there's pitch issues.
Most likely. I mean, we'll always check to see what other skills they have. We'll watch the monologue, we'll watch the dance.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes if we're saying, well, I don't know, maybe there's potential here.
Mm-hmm.
We'll screen them in and take a look. But the singing is really, really important.
Well, and that leads to my next question, which is you kind of mentioned you look at all three disciplines from a training perspective very equally.
Mhm.
It sounds like maybe not completely equally for musical theater in terms of admission. Is singing higher on the radar in terms of how that score might weigh more than rather than an even holistic score? How does dance and acting relate to that as well?
I think singing, acting probably is the thing. But I think, again, we sometimes see great actors who maybe really weak in the singing area. So we'll sort of see, do they have potential? Sometimes we'll vocalize them, if their material is not helping us determine that. But I would say probably singing first,
Mm-hmm.
as well as, acting. Sometimes they can act while they're singing the song and then the monologue is a little rough, and that's still,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to see some sign of acting. Um, and storytelling. And I would say dance is really not huge for us.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, it is exciting when we see a dancer, but because we have the ability to put them through the dance classes in a way that is going to challenge them, but be at their level, it's doesn't weigh as heavily. So I would say in a class of 26, we'll probably have about maybe 7 really strong dancers,
Hmm.
and then all other levels with the rest.
And are you looking for almost that kind of balance consciously? Are you trying to say like, I want to have some really amazing singing actors, or it just happens that 7 of them turn out to be great
It just
dancers?
it just kind of happens that way.
Hmm. Love it. And then I know you mentioned, of course, that you're conservatory. So the bigger part of admission certainly is going to be on the artistic yes.
Mhm,
In terms of, let's say the student is an artistic yes in your mind or in the
mhm.
faculty's mind in general, does it then work with the interaction of the academics and what needs to go by the university in terms of grades and SATs and all those kind of
Right.
things?
So I think, for better or for worse, the requirement for GPA is a little lower at Point Park. Um,
For better, we say for better. We're
well,
actors here.
for some for better, but what's great is the students that are academically inclined, we have an honors program,
Uh-huh.
and so I always say it's like the best of both worlds. If you're really academically inclined, you can do the honors program, you can take up a minor. Um, but if you're not academically inclined, it is possible with, a little research with upperclassmen to kind of just pick the classes that will give you something, but maybe will not be as challenging academically.
Hmm.
So,
And what does that mean in terms of, I know for a lot of schools where because a lot of our students tend to be overachieving
mhm,
academic students, they tend to have those high GPAs.
right.
What does that mean in terms of like scholarship opportunities? Are there academic scholarships
There,
for
there
students
are
who then?
academic scholarships, and I would say most of the musical theater students have excellent GPAs.
Hmm.
But just some just aren't interested in pursuing that in a strong way.
Hmm.
Um, but I would say, I do find that most of the students that we take in have a high GPA, and I'll sometimes take a look, because I don't think it's the only answer, but it might lead to what a work ethic might be.
Hmm.
Not always, but
Well, I do think that is one of the reasons our musical theater kids tend to have such high GPAs is you need to have a high work ethic if you are
yeah,
acting and singing and dancing. It's like they tend to be very organized, very structured, very good at
yeah.
managing the course load of high school, which was daunting for me. I'll say in high school, I couldn't manage all the organization.
Well, I sort of felt the same way, so maybe I feel a little like this one.
Yeah. Um, And then just lastly with the audition process, I just, I'll throw the general question of, whether it's from auditions you just saw, as I guess we're probably wrapping our tour pretty soon,
Mhm.
or, just as you think about students about to enter auditions, if we have any more coming up, is there any sort of advice before you specifically walk into a Point Park audition that you'd want to say, hey, just do this?
Well, I think first of all, just know that we want you to do well. We're on your side. We want you to be comfortable. We hope we're creating a positive environment so you can do your best work, and
Mhm.
have fun, and maybe don't worry about the result. Just enjoy the moment that you're in.
Great advice all around. I'd love to talk about the challenges of the last, let's say, 2 years now. We're almost at 2 years with this virus, and just how Point Park has sort of adapted to meet the moment, both in terms of conversations about sort of the demands for racial equity that have come up a lot now 2 summers ago, but also then just the challenges of a virtual world, living and teaching and trying to work in a virtual world. So take that wherever you want to go with that question.
Yeah, sure. So I think COVID, I'm not sure we even know what the results are on actor training with all that we've had to do virtually for all our musical theater classes last year. Everything had to be done online or, virtually. Um, but I think just like our students, the faculty is really ambitious too. And we were just determined to make sure our students were meeting their training goals. We're back on ground. It seems like we have met those.
Mm.
I think that's just sort of like the way of folks in our field, right? It's just like something comes up and you're like, well, let's figure out how to deal with it. And so I think we did. And we're still singing with masks on, and our students are amazingly adaptable,
Mm.
um, because we just do the work, and the work has been really good. Um, but it will be interesting to see what the fallout process is. And I will say one thing is that they're very quiet in the room, which is interesting. That
Mm.
we're sort of teaching them on camera, um,
Mhm.
which is not necessarily stage worthy. So it'll be interesting to see how that manifests itself. But I think we've done a pretty good job. We've had really good retention. Um, yeah,
And
I
I
mean,
just want to burrow in on what you just said. They get quiet in the room. Do you mean that as almost a negative, as in they're not as boisterous, or not? They're not, or do you mean quiet as in a
they just
positive
sort of
thing?
how to fill a space with their voice. They're just
Uh
speaking at a, like not a theatrical level.
huh.
Um, they're
They're
speaking.
not projecting.
They're,
You're not
yeah,
getting
right.
them to. Yes.
They're just not on their voice, and of course that leads into like, well, they're not breathing,
Mm.
and supporting. So I mean, that's just like something I've started noticing. Um,
I'm noticed that the laziness of this microphone, because I can just lean in and basically whisper and it sounds good. Not so good. Like that's not the same stuff we learned in theater
it's
school. I know it's a
right.
different thing.
And when they were standing in their bedrooms for a year,
Hmm.
doing theater, it's just, we were probably, and, we're so hyper focused on seeing them. So
Hmm.
I think that's been an interesting transition, but we're managing. I mean, we've been able to get shows up this year. We have a lot of testing going on,
Hmm.
and knock on wood. I mean, we've been able, like, there hasn't been too much COVID. Everyone is vaccinated. Um, I think the other conversations are highly important. I think we've always been committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion, but I think the last couple of years, maybe we had to reflect more and say, maybe there's way more to do and to
Hmm.
reevaluate. I think I think it's wonderful because I feel like we're meeting those conversations as a faculty and student body together, and the university has stepped up their support. Um, obviously, probably like everywhere, we're taking workshops and trying to really understand more how to bring those things into the program and into the classroom. Um, and for instance, certain initiatives, because it's one thing to take these workshops and have more knowledge, but if you don't do anything
Hmm.
with it, I'm not sure it's helpful. Um, but like we have something called Junior Lab where all the juniors do a show together, and so we're dedicating it to young BIPOC writers of musicals, which musical theater is very white men,
Hmm.
as far as writers, and that's exciting. We're working with a very exciting artist, Dante Green, and we're doing one of his shows. Um, uh, we're just making sure that we include material in the training that is from all areas, culturally and um, ethnically, and just that we're inclusive in the material
Mm-hmm.
that we're choosing. We've always sort of partnered with our students in what material they're going to use in class, but they're now sitting in on choosing the season. So we're really bringing in the student voices more.
Mm.
Um, we've had, we've started doing like community agreements and just really trying to just bring that into the classroom to decolonize our syllabi. And to really just, I think for our students always is to think about storytelling, that there are many stories that can be told many different ways. And
Mm-hmm.
there are stories that we haven't even told yet, which we need to start telling. And we have some students that have started writing, which is really exciting. Um, but I think that is something we can do in the classroom for our young students who are
Mm-hmm.
incredible and may not have seen themselves reflected very often in musicals, is that we just reimagine a lot of things and really make sure that they feel empowered and that they're enough.
And you mentioned the university stepped up with a
Mhm.
lot of support. What does that look like from a kind of university supporting that mission perspective?
Yeah, so they've hired an equity, diversity, inclusion director. Um, they've provided they brought in Karen Olivo or KO, and they did workshops with us for a week. So their school is providing a lot of
Mm-hmm.
informational things. They actually helped us support this initiative for Junior Lab with some financial support.
Mm-hmm. We love
Um,
financial support.
yeah, absolutely. Um, there are new committees and there's new people in charge of things, and there's support for the students. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's additional support for, mental health and just I guess more support
Yeah,
systems.
totally. That makes sense. And then I'd love to talk a little bit, jumping back to virtual a little bit, about your audition tour this year. And then if you have a sense, I know we're not quoting you to anything on February 14th of 2022 of what 2023 is going to be, but do you have a sense of what virtual is going to exist for like in the future?
Well, I don't know. We thought we were going back to on ground this year for
Mm-hmm.
auditions, but we held a virtual date because I think we might be able to reach some folks that can't maybe afford or get to auditions uh, because travel is not available to everyone, and we thought that would be great. And now, of course, we made it through one on ground, and then we switched to virtual.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we will probably always keep maybe a virtual aspect to it so that we can maybe see some students we wouldn't otherwise see.
I love it. Any final thoughts? Any thoughts that we didn't get to get in about you go, oh, I always want to say this about Point Park. I didn't get to brag about this special thing about our program. Anything we didn't get in from there?
Well, I'm sure there are, and I'll think of them as soon as we hang up.
Well, after we hang up, if people want to hear more from you, we know they can follow PPU Musical Theater on Instagram. We're
Yes.
spelling that with theater, R-E, but I'll bet you'll find it if you search it either way. Are there other places that we should be going in terms of checking Point Park out or checking you out if we want to follow and ask more
Yeah,
questions?
sure. We have our own recruitment office that you can contact. You certainly can email me at zbarzell@pointpark.edu. Um, we have a website, and I believe on the website you can find the showcase from last year.
Very cool. Yeah.
And then our showcase is going to be virtual again this year. So at the end of April, you'll be able to do that. Um, and I think Instagram is nice too because well, or even like the I think there's a Facebook page too, like and you can see like a life in a Point Park student.
Mm-hmm.
But our students are really open to talking about the program and sharing. And although I'm happy to talk about the program, I think the student perspective is super important. And our students are really generous with their time, and you can reach out to them, and I'm sure they would be happy to talk.
Well, Ziva, it was such a pleasure getting to chat with you. Thanks so much for the time.
Oh, I appreciate it. It was really nice to meet you, and thank you so much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ziva. I found her to be so grounded and warm and open and really fun to chat with. I just want to do a little deeper dive on something we didn't actually get really much into on the episode at all, but just this very concept of like triple threat training for musical theater. We talked about it a bit with Courtney Young. We talked about like a triple awe conversation as opposed to triple threat. And we kind of hit on it a bit with Robert Westenberg of Missouri State as well. But especially as this year transitions for a lot of our seniors into the receiving results and narrowing down their options portion of things, I just want to present this conversation about different approaches in terms of, do we lean into our strengths or lean into our weaknesses for musical theater performers, and specifically strengths of like those three triple awe, triple threat categories. In general, for our younger students, we're going to always encourage you to lean into your weaknesses with your training, meaning bolster your abilities in all three areas as much as possible. Especially as teenagers and as younger teenagers, we have seen remarkable growth in all three areas for students who are willing to put the time and the effort into it, especially if they have enough time to make that happen. And even if you aren't going to have this remarkable turnaround and turn those two left feet into Fred Astaire, you can significantly increase your confidence and your ability as a whole auditioner by putting effort into all of those areas so you feel good about all three of the things you're walking into the room with. Now, of course, just to give the caveat, with younger performers, it's really totally up to you still in terms of what path you might want to forge. And for performers on the cusp of like musical theater or acting or musical theater or vocal performance, that opposite approach of leaning into your strengths might be right if you're thinking you might even want to totally drop one of the legs of those stools and just do singing or just do acting, etc. But in general, this is the advice we would give to musical theater performers, to lean into the weaknesses. When it comes to actually choosing a college and thinking about the performer who will graduate in their 20s and start a career in the business, I do think it is more of an open question, and I see both sides of the debate. So I kind of want to present both sides of the debate to you now. I think it gets really individual from performer to performer to evaluate what they think they want from life. I will say, if the goal is only to work in the musical theater, or for those who the goal is Broadway, 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 which I'll say in general, Broadway is not the only place to work in the musical theater. But if that is the goal, there is definitely a path of, I am an incredible dancer and I can get by as a singer and actor, and that can absolutely work. So if that is already your strength, going to a school that supports and bolsters that strength could make a lot of sense. To make a sports analogy, I have to do it. In the sports world, the equivalent of this would be making yourself into a specialist, or sometimes we'll call them role players, right? If you're really good at shooting and defense, but maybe not good at like dribbling or other things you have to do on a basketball court, you are extremely marketable in the NBA for being able to do those two things and kind of knowing your role. So you're going to work a lot. You're going to get to have a long career, though you're going to have the kind of capped upside of what your career could potentially be, in that you're not going to be a superstar. If that's all you can do, you'll never get to be a superstar and get to be Steph Curry or LeBron James or whatever. I always make NBA analogies. I can I'll branch out and make more sports analogies. Just, it's my favorite sport.
Come on, Charlie. It was just the Super Bowl.
Come on, I know it's just the Super Bowl, but by the time they're listening, the Super Bowl's long gone and we're done with it. But conversely, if you look at your college education and where you're leaning into your weaknesses, potentially has advantage for that upside. So being really strong in all three or two out of the three disciplines, but that does have the potential downside of maybe muddying your marketability if, let's say, you're a 7 out of 10 in all three, but a 9 in none. Especially for those students who might have walked in as an 8.5 in one of them, but then are lessening their training in favor of the other two disciplines and actually letting it slack a little bit as opposed to sort of keeping it up. I do think the most important aspect of this always is what you want for your career. So do you want to only be an actor or only be a dancer? Would that make you happy? If not, then, the question's a little bit moot. But if you are thinking strategically, I do think it's worth considering all aspects of this question and what you think you want for your life. I've had schoolmates at Carnegie Mellon, which is known to be kind of an acting-based musical theater school, who were capital D dancers and went there because they wanted to work on their acting and storytelling skills, right? And they've worked successfully as dancers still and also as actors and singers. I've also seen the opposite, where very good singers and dancers went to a non-musical theater acting school to really beef up that skill set, thinking that was the strongest part of their skill set, and knowing they would have to continue keeping up their dancing and singing skills on a supplemental basis. But they were focusing on their strength first in terms of what they wanted to ultimately do. Maybe they wanted to work a lot in TV and film. Maybe they wanted to do plays and musicals, but musicals wasn't going to be the whole of their career. If you're not reading a ton of advice and all of that, that's right. I'm not telling you what to do with this debate. I think there are so many unknowns to what you will grow into being and graduating as 4 years later. But I do think as you're considering your final decision schools, it's always an important conversation to see both sides of from that strength and weaknesses perspective. So you can kind of play it out in your head in all the scenarios. Of course, college is only 4 years of your training, and you will continue to grow as an artist and a person. But I do think it's worth noting sometimes that sweatshirt carries a bit of an outsized influence in our lives and how we choose to wear that moving forward into our careers. It's also worth noting not every school will there be an obvious and easy, this is an acting based musical theater school. This is an incredibly strong dance school. You're not always going to have that incredibly easy dialectic to work in. Sometimes it's kind of a murkier, we're leaning a little more toward these two. And for me as a performer, I'm a little stronger in these two. So it won't always be so easy that you'll be able to make this decision. This is more for when you really do have that black and white decision of this school really strong in this school really strong in this. Well, if you found this episode really strong and you want to hear some more of them, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button? You don't have to be an amazing actor or dancer to hit that subscribe button. Just hit it with your finger. It's easy. We'd also love it if you were to rate and review us. You do need to be a pretty good writer to rate and review us. I want some poetic reviews whenever possible. You can also reach out to us with questions for the pod at mailbag@mappingthecollegeaudition.com, or reach out to me and Meghan directly and grace us with a follow at Charmer7 and at Meghan Marie 2014. If you want to work with MTCA for help with your individual prep for your college audition journey, please check us out at mtca.nyc. You can also follow us at Musical Theater College Auditions, at TweetMTCA on Twitter. To my young artists out there mapping their journeys, whatever happens, don't let this pandemic make you quiet. Katy Perry and I just want to hear you roar. We'll see you next week.